Budget 2021-2022 rests on 6 pillars, that is health and well-being, physical and financial capital and infrastructure, inclusive development for aspirational India, innovation, minimum government and maximum governance is what the government has been saying, and they're hoping that it will be achieved through this budget. Let me bring in my panelists now. Gaurav Chaudhary continues to be here in the studio. Sanjay Agarwal is the President of Commerce and Industry. Kanchan Gupta is joining us as well. Tapti Ghosh is personal tax expert, Deloitte. Mahesh Gupta is CMD, Kent RO Systems. Saket Mishra is an investment banker. I'm going to begin with you, Mr. Agarwal. Your first thoughts on the budget.
Well, I think this budget is a very positive effort towards facing up to the situation that has been caused by nobody's doing. It's been a hugely disruptive year and with a huge demand on resources and of course the difficulties attendant to therein. But I think overall the direction of the budget is very positive. We see a very positive intent to strengthen the infrastructure, both social and physical infrastructure. I think health has been given a lot of primacy. We are looking at something like 2.83 lakh crores being spent on infrastructure and 35,000 crores being specially kept for vaccines. I think the stress on health has also been, on education has also been seen in terms of the number of schools that are going to be revamped and the number of new schools.
We seem to have lost that connection with Mr. Agarwal. We'll try and go back to him. But scrapping policy, vaccine, clear air to tackle air pollution, also 2,217 crore for 42 cities with a million plus population has been proposed. Swachh Bharat, Swachh plans has been developed further. Universal coverage of water supply being strengthened too. You wanted to make a point, Kanchan Gupta, particularly with regards to registration, that is the registration for migrants, something that was discussed during the entire migrant crisis. Now clarity emerging with the government going ahead, and also for the tea workers, 1,000 crores.
Yeah, I mean, that is the political economy part of the budget. I mean, you know, the political thinking behind the budget. I think the government has done well to start recognizing jobs of the future and the future of jobs, which will essentially revolve around the gig economy. And once you start thinking in terms of protecting those working in the gig economy, although it is not clear exactly how the government can fix a minimum wage for gig economy workers, but I'm sure there has been some thinking about it, and we'll get to know of it in the coming days. Similarly, the registration of migrant workers, to have it all in one place, on one platform, so that you can track migrant workers, you can ensure that they are not deprived of social welfare benefits, along with things like one ration card, one nation, one ration card. But that again requires a certain amount of monitoring and registration of individuals. So this is going to be a huge effort, but once it is done, it will also become a part of the key data areas, key data zones of the government. And lastly, I would like to talk about this 1,000 crores which the finance minister has mentioned about tea garden workers in Bengal and Assam. Unfortunately, we have heard governments talking about tea garden workers for the last 10-15 years, but in real terms, very little has happened, very little has percolated down. But I guess because of the political imperative of the moment, elections are due in both West Bengal and Assam, things will now move swiftly, and there will be some devolution of funds for the welfare of tea garden workers in Assam and Bengal. Their condition is pretty grim. And the tyranny of distance from Delhi ensures that while we wax eloquent on others, we never think in terms of the thousands of tea garden workers of these two states.
Yes, so that is the political economy aspect of it. Sanjay Agarwal is back with us. Sanjay Agarwal, the big takeaway and the big picture according to you. We can also see Trapti Ghosh, she is the personal tax expert at Deloitte. Go ahead, Mr. Agarwal.
I think the big picture is that the government has shown a very strong commitment towards
Tapati, coming in on this, as someone who manages taxes of individuals, who understands it, what will you be telling those who are looking at this budget today? What is in it for us?
So my first take is that there is a positive. The budget speech continuously had an overtone of the government's focus on ease of doing business in India, for which the FM had reiterated that the tax system as such has to be transparent, efficient, and will have to promote investments. So the fact that the tax rate surcharge and the cess have been left untouched, the fact that the COVID cess has not been considered, all of this brings stability and certainty to the tax framework, and that's definitely a positive. But there are some hidden, I would say, nuances to it. For instance, if you recall last year, employers' contribution to PF, NPS and superannuation in excess of 750,000 was taxed. So that was one step towards moving from a EEE system of taxation of these retirement funds to a tax kind of a system. This year, a reference has been made to employees contributing huge sums of money to PF funds, and the fact that exemption is made available to these people, to these persons, on the interest that is accrued on their contributions. So this is now being limited, and interest contribution made by persons exceeding 250,000 rupees in a particular previous year is now going to be taxed. So that is again moving from an EEE system to a ETE system. So it has got the accretions to these funds for employee contribution is to a certain extent going to be taxed. So that is definitely is a surprise. In addition to that, as far as ULIPs are concerned, exemption is not going to be available if the amount of premium that is going to be payable in a particular financial year exceeds 250,000 for a ULIP plan. So, of course, we are in the process of going through the finer details of it, but they are going to be treated at par with equity-oriented mutual funds and taxed accordingly.
Yes. The budget, of course, of 2021 is being said as an infrastructure-rich budget. What did Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman say? Let's listen in. I'm going to take that question to our panelists.
National highway works in the state of Tamil Nadu at an investment of 1.03 lakh crores. Second, 1,100 kilometers of national highway works in the state of Kerala at an investment of 65,000 crores. Third, 675 kilometers of highway works in the state of West Bengal at a cost of 25,000 crores in the state of Assam. Further works of more than 34,000 crores covering more than 1,300 kilometers of national highways will be undertaken in the state in the coming 3 years. The National Infrastructure Pipeline, which I announced in December 2019, is the first of its kind. Whole of government exercise ever undertaken by Government of India. The NIP was launched with 6,835 projects. The project pipeline has now expanded to 7,400 projects. Around 217 projects worth rupees 1.10 lakh crores under some key infrastructure ministries have been completed.
बड़े प्रमाण पर इंपोर्ट करने वाले ऑटो स्पेयर पार्ट्स पर ड्यूटी बढ़ाई गई, उसके कारण मेक इन इंडिया और मेड इन इंडिया को बढ़ावा मिलेगा और ये जो 4.5 लाख करोड़ की इंडस्ट्री है, ये पिछले साल तक यानी आने वाले साल को पूरा करेंगी तो 6 लाख करोड़ की हो जाएगी और ये देश में सबसे ज्यादा एम्प्लॉयमेंट पोटेंशियल देने वाली इंडस्ट्री है।
लोगों को उम्मीद नहीं थी कि इस प्रकार का बजट पेश होगा, क्योंकि इसके पहले भी 5 मिनी बजट एक प्रकार से सरकार के द्वारा पेश किए जा चुके हैं। कई पैकेज की घोषणा हुई है, जिसमें एक आत्मनिर्भर भारत का भी पैकेज महत्वपूर्ण है। तो मैं समझता हूं कि यह बहुत ही ये शानदार बजट है और इसकी जितनी भी प्रशंसा की जाए वह कम है। मैं कह सकता हूं कि डिफेंस के बजट में भी बढ़ोतरी हुई है।
A budget coming after 5 mini budget is what Defence Minister there said, and the thrust of course is on monetizing assets, creation of an expansion of road and highways infrastructure, focus on railway infrastructure as well, urban infrastructure, power infrastructure. I'm looking at a long list here, Gaurav.
Clearly it's infrastructure rich. The government has made it very clear that the road to recovery and the road to growth and road to more jobs is going to be through construction projects, through infrastructure projects, most of them which will be long gestation but have strong potential to generate employment, there's demonstrable evidence to show that, and and to prove that hypothesis. That to that extent, the government has also ensured that finances do not remain a major challenge, and that is why the government has decided to set up a dedicated development finance institution, which will be mandated with the task of ensuring financial closure for most of these projects. Please remember that these are infrastructure projects which are long gestation. Some of them will run into about probably 30 years. So achieving financial closure for them or organizing finance or funds for this kind of projects has always been a daunting challenge in India. Hopefully the DFI, the New Development Finance Institution, will ensure that funds are more easily provided for this kind of infrastructure projects, and that even if the implementation takes place at a fraction of what the government probably would be anticipating, that would still do the trick for the government, because it has direct employment generation potential as well as strong secondary round effects, positive effects across intermediate industries like steel, cement and paint.
Sanjay Agarwal continues to be with us. Sanjay Agarwal, we are looking at the point being made by several experts here of the big infrastructure push that the government is hoping will help them generate employment and look at other concerns as well. This is about pumping in money as well as government not shying away from borrowing and spending. Is that, according to you, the big takeaway?
I think this is the biggest takeaway of this budget. The total stress on infrastructure. It is not just pumping money, it is using your own resources, it is also borrowing. It is a mix of all approaches, and it is also the third way to raise money is disinvestment, for which the government has made some very specific announcements of some large PSUs which are being targeted to be disinvested this year. LIC IPO should also be another big fundraiser for the infrastructure. I think we are looking at all possible aspects, including 20,000 crores of capital being paid to the new mega DFI, which is supposed to hopefully raise 5 lakh crores plus for the investment in infra. As a chamber, we had rather been recommending that the investment required is much higher, because our national infrastructure pipeline, as the FM said, is 111 lakh crores. So even if you divide it equally over 5 years, even then you need to spend 22 lakhs or 25 lakh crores every year. And for that, I think we need to get a bit more aggressive on raising of funds. Probably, to what extent the budget is really concerned about DFI raising independently funds from the international markets. Maybe if these targets are met, then the government could be more aggressively looking at potentially raising higher funds for infrastructure.
Mr. Agarwal,
that is the only way to break this logjam and to get the jobs moving and to get the economy moving.
Yes, if we were to look at the immediate impact of the budget, in the short term, while we understand that in the medium to long term, when it translates, then it will be for the self-reliance or the larger idea of the Prime Minister. Short term, what do you see? How will this job creation, can it be created in short term?
You see, short term is basically the strengthening. You see, what creates jobs? what creates jobs is expenditure and optimism, both, or mix of both. So expenditure, government has not taken its hand away from the tail. The government is actually still spending, and we can see that from the budget that the budget estimates and the amount of 6.8% deficit that is still being looked at. So on top of that, if there is an optimism, then people, instead of keeping that money in the kitty, they will like to go out and spend for their needs. And as they spend, they create more jobs and more demand. So I think it is a virtuous cycle which has to be, kick-started. And that is probably what the government has decided to do. Of course, everybody would have more and more expectations and would have liked a much more aggressive approach. But within the circumstances, I think the government must be applauded for having done what it could in this budget.
All right, let's listen in to reactions coming in from opposition parties. Here's Congress Party's Shashi Tharoor.
I must say that a lot of the obvious needs of the country were addressed, particularly when you look at issues like public health, public infrastructure. The government has bitten the bullet on the fiscal deficit. Their numbers were quite unrealistic before. So the real question the country has to ask is, how will this government fulfill its promises, and what is the faith? The finance minister asked us all to have faith. Well, faith has to be built on a track record, and the track record, unfortunately, does not justify us feeling much faith.
ये बजट में अगर देखा जाए सही ढंग से तो देखने को मिलता है कि कुछ राज्यों में चुनाव है, चुनाव के मद्देनजर रोड फॉर वोट बना दिया। बहुत सारे पैसा खर्चा करने की तो बात किए हैं, लेकिन हमें क्या मिला? कोई ग्रांट नहीं मिला। हमारी ये उम्मीद था कि सरकार कैश ट्रांसफर करेगी गरीब लोगों को बचाने के लिए, कंजम्पशन एक्सपेंडिचर के लिए कुछ करेगा, लेकिन कुछ नहीं। सरकार की राय ये है कि कंट्री शुड बी पुट ऑन सेल, बेच दो।
सरकार कह रही है दिशा और दशा बदल देगा देश का ये बजट।
नहीं, ऐसे तो जुमले उनके पास बहुत है। दिशा बदलेगा, देश को मजबूत बनाएंगे, लेकिन इसमें कोई डिफेंस के लिए उन्होंने क्या पैसा रखा वो तो नहीं बताया। और जो 4 स्टेट में इलेक्शन को जाना है, वहां पर 3,20,000 करोड़ रुपए उन्होंने रखा है। यह अच्छी बात है, किसी राज्य को पैसा देना डेवलपमेंट के लिए हम वेलकम करते हैं, लेकिन कब किस वक्त, खास करके वीकर सेक्शंस के लिए भी इनका जो बजट है उसमें कुछ नहीं एक्सेप्ट द एकलव्य स्कूल छोड़ के।
Point being made by the opposition leader there, Gaurav, about direct benefit transfer coming to the hands of the poor.
Yeah.
But the government did do so during pandemic.
Yes, so there was always an expectation of an income transfer scheme that many would have thought of, that the finance minister will announce an income transfer scheme. The last time the big income transfer scheme that happened was during the pandemic, when money was transferred to the Jan Dhan Yojana, Jan Dhan accounts. And before that, the big income transfer scheme obviously is the ongoing scheme, which pertains to farmers. There has been an argument in favor of an income transfer scheme for particularly the urban poor who had actually borne the brunt of this pandemic during the lockdown and the subsequent restrictions, when they had to go back to their homes and villages, walking many hundred miles in many instances. But the government did not fall for it, did not go for it. The assumption probably the government would have thought about is that it's always a better idea to empower people rather than to go for an income transfer scheme. That's a difficult choice to make, because an income transfer scheme is something that has been tested in many economies and has turned to be successful in many, and also has not turned to be successful in many others. So it's a difficult welfare choice, policy choice that the government had to make. At this point, the government probably believes that income transfer scheme is not the right way to go, given the resource constraints. That could be one of the constraints, but also from a policy framework point of view, the government believes that empowering them with more opportunities may be a better way to come with a long-term solution to this problem.
Mr. Agarwal, the focus is on health, and that is the testimony that the government is committed in handling COVID, and India has handled COVID much better than several first world nations as well. What will be the role of the private players when it comes to making health infrastructure more about self-reliance?
Yes, I think private players are already playing a very important role in the health infrastructure. You have some of the best hospitals equipped to handle patient care, and in fact, which are even attracting a large number of foreign patients also in terms of the quality of service and price at which they are delivered. All that being said, I think what is really important is for the health infrastructure to be publicly funded to the maximum extent. This is one expenditure which we feel that the government needs to take care of on a broad footing. I think 2.83 lakh crores that has been committed in the current budget is a pretty good number. It's nearly double of what was done last year. But the request of our PLC chamber has been that we have to ramp it up to 3% of GDP to bring our health system to the position where we need to, right from our primary healthcare centers to block and district level hospitals and institutions and at the central hospitals. There has to be a seamless delivery of OPEX and CAPEX on a regular basis to every health center that is needed. We had this situation where even in the national capital of Delhi, doctors remained unpaid for many months. That is a very sad state of affairs, and this should not be allowed to happen. A system has to be made, and seamless funding must be made for ensuring that both the, running requirements, so OPEX also means not just salaries, but various other consumables, various other maintenance activities that need expenses, and CAPEX, of course, to upgrade the facilities. The point is that we need 35% of the health expenditure maximum to be in the private sector hands, in private hands, rather than 65%, which is currently the situation. So I think this is one area where, of course, the government within the resources that it could raise at this point of time has done, but that should be the aim and target for us. And one more thing that we need to do is to ensure that we double our number of doctors and nurses and paramedics in the next 3 years by building more and more medical colleges and relaxing the unnecessarily high specifications which are jacking up the cost of setting up such institutions, and our students are going to countries like Kyrgyzstan or Uzbekistan or to China for medical studies. That has to be done away with. We need a huge focus on our health infrastructure, on our health manpower in every possible way.
Yes. Let's listen in to all reactions that have come in. A lot of political reactions from Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister to opposition leaders.
जब दुनिया की तमाम अर्थव्यवस्थाएं पूरी तरह प्रभावित हुई हैं, जनता की अपेक्षाओं और आकांक्षाओं को ध्यान में रख करके एक विकासोन्मुख और व्यावहारिक बजट प्रस्तुत करने के लिए मैं आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री जी का और माननीय वित्त मंत्री जी का हृदय से अभिनंदन करता हूं।
It's a very welcoming, well-balanced budget. I think after a pandemic by which not only our country but the whole world is affected, I think there can be a better balanced budget than this, where you have taken care of every section of the society and how to improve the economy of the country. I think it's a very well-balanced and one of the best budgets possible after this pandemic.
Well, the finance minister seems oblivious of the fact that the budget is the economy is in the 37th month of consecutive decline. There was absolutely no central focus or theme as to how the economy is going to grow, except for the national monetization plan, which means that you're going to sell off the family silver in order to fund the budget deficit. There was nothing else in the budget which was substantive in terms of making the economy grow and returning it to the high growth path that it experienced between 2004 and 14, when it grew on an average at 8% annually.
We are slipping into a short break, but before that, something more exciting than the union budget announcement. Only today, for one lucky viewer, CRED is